Alright, this is the Tannhauser connection still holding out at Harbor Control. They just need to find out which relay we're in now.
Welcome to the Tannhauser Connection, episode 3. I am Carl, the Black Goat.
And I'm Jamie.
Alright, what are we talking about today?
Okay, so far over the last 2 episodes, we've looked at Cyberpunk in general and creating your character and its life path and the history and that sort of stuff for it. Now we're going to move on to gear and actually what makes Cyberpunk is the cyberware. If that's actually a sentence. But anyhow, so we're going to sort of break that apart and have a closer look at it.
Alright, well let's get right on to it. I think it's going to be a short one.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright. I think the first thing, and when people mention cyberware or cyber implants, like the first thing that comes to mind is like a robotic arm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also, and the other side of it that is not that common is neural wear. And I remember, to explain it, is like the moment in the Matrix when I think Neo wakes up and goes like, I know Kung Fu.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about neural wear, because I think it has a really big connotation, because without it, kind of all the other cyber implants kind of fall apart anyway, because at some point you need some wiring in your brain that connects machine with your brain signal.
Yep.
So how do you think it actually works on the world of cyberpunk, the neural wear?
There's all sorts of research that's happened across the world in this sort of area, spawning off like the ideas that have come out of cyberpunk. But in a general way, I tend to think of it more like Ghost in the Shell, that you've got a computer tacked onto your brain that you can access. So there's that side of it, or more integrated with the human brain. So it allows you to basically connect or control the details of a cyber limb. And I mean, I tend to think of it in a couple of ways. One, where you've integrated, where I suppose the cybernetic stuff has been implanted into your brain. And there's a couple of really good articles in the early days of cyberpunk in, I think, the Neural Interface magazine, which basically, they got a thing and just shotgunned a whole bunch of filaments into your head to connect it up. These days, there'd be something far less haphazard, but that's sort of one side of it. The other is sort of you look at it from the perspective of, say, Ghost in the Shell, where you've got these layers of cybernetics or processes that are extending the human brain beyond normal capabilities. So much like what you said with Neo in the Matrix learning Kung Fu in the flash of a second, it's kind of like the same way. You're able to extend and really push your brain out beyond those sort of reasonably human limits.
What are the examples of like a neural wear in real life? Because I think we're getting pretty close, especially with what's the Elon Musk company?
Neuralink.
Neuralink. Yeah. But I mean, it all started with like a military companies trying to get like pilots to react and control stuff with their mind. But it has advanced so much. Like examples of like real life cyberware is like audio enhancements. What do you call it? Aided hearing.
I'm trying to think of the thing. It's
we have now blind people, and you can have a cyber optic that allows you to see like some sort of shadows. I was looking at that, and that's like crazy.
Well, there was one that happened back in 2005, which was, I think, researched by Berkeley, where they basically wired up a bunch of uni students with a really low-res camera, and what they were seeing in black and white through the camera. And this is back in 2005. Neuralink, it's been around for a while, but there's been research that's happened in the university area of one person who's wired up their head to do neurally control a switch. There's a guy I heard about that he has a cybernetic eye that he can see through, but he can only wear it for about half an hour before it gets too hot for his head. So a lot of that technology is out there, it's being developed, but it's not quite there ready for as consumer grade products. Mind you, the advances we've had in, I just think of it as cyber audio, but the stuff for deaf people where they're able to wire something into their head so that they can actually hear when their actual audio ears don't work the way they should. And you're going to see more and more of that happen in the next coming decades.
Yeah. Also with the nanotechnology, like in Cyberpunk, it's assumed that like nanotech is like complete, as in like there's pretty much nothing you cannot do.
Yeah, but nanotech in the real world, it's more like nanomaterials. So there's a big push in an area called involving graphene, which is like 1 atom thick of graphite molecules or carbon. And what can they do with that? And there's, nanotubes which are able to have various odd properties. There's a guy I used to work with who would bring in a pair of pants that he has that you couldn't spill water on because it had just shed the water off. So this is more in the area of material sciences, where you've got these weird substances that can do all sorts of odd things, and less in the vein of microscopic machines, which is what nanotech...
But nowadays there are a lot of procedures where you get injected a little robot with a camera and it just crawls through and removes some blockages and stuff.
Well, there's keyhole surgery where they're able to get almost like a needlepoint thing to navigate through the body to be able to then remove a blockage or operate on a particular area. But the idea of nanoware in Cyberpunk is you're looking at like microscopic machines that are magically small and that sort of stuff, whereas the modern era is kind of a little different. But it's a great little bit of fantasy in that regards for Cyberpunk.
We're getting there.
Yes.
Yeah,
most kids are rewired by the time they're 12, with a neural processor just being part of their education. Maybe their parents think it's a magic option. It'll buy their brat the edge or something. But skills like that come from one place only. Bitter experience.
So how common do you think neuralware is? Is that like a luxury, or is that like a common, any street punk can have it?
Everybody
is it like
needs it.
You go to a pharmacy and you just get a chip?
Well, everybody needs it. So it's used to basically integrate cyber limbs. And the way it was written originally, it's like the basic piece was a neuralware processor. If you looked at, I think it's Home of the Brave, which is the US source book, they go through and talk about how kids get this as part of their education. So it becomes a sort of important thing. And the way I sort of tend to view it is that the kids from corporate sectors, they'll get this as part of their education to enhance their skills, because it's that whole neural enhancement kind of thing. Whereas street kids or kids from the combat zone are less likely to get that initially, but they'll end up getting it when they can afford to get it. There's a good little story out of Merishades, an anthology of cyberpunk stories, and one of the characters in that is she's using this neural enhancement so she can pass her medical exams, so she can actually get in and become a med tech. And that sort of gives
nice.
A good little thing. I mean, it all gets stuffed up in the story and it's a good read, but it gives you an idea of, in this ultra competitive world, you need every little piece of edge you can get. And if you've got a neural processor and you can jack in a chip that'll cover some of the basics, then you'll probably end up doing that. One of the jokes that a player from one of the groups I was in, when asked about your empathy is dangerously low, his response was, empathy, I'll buy the chip. And that was the attitude.
Now that you mentioned that, why don't we talk about the limitations or the implications of chip skills? Because like one of the things that not many people know is that they cannot be improved.
Oh no! It's kind of like they're locked in place. That's it.
So you cannot learn, yeah.
No.
But what else?
Well, they have a timing restriction. So if you slot the chip into your chipware socket, you're not going to instantly get access to that skill. If it's a reflex-based skill in the old system, and I assume this will change for the new stuff, because of the new stat and all, but you have like a 2-day per skill level to get that chip working with your body. Because if you think about it, someone who practices martial arts is practicing it for their body type, how tall they are, how far they reach, and that sort of stuff. And as soon as you change those parameters in your own body, it changes learning that stuff. So the result is that it takes...
for physical and for reflex abilities I understand, and for like pure knowledge I think that's understandable. Like if you know, I don't know, set all the equations or like
just say you got a
formulas,
a chemistry chip,
or
right?
That's fine.
You plug that
but what it doesn't teach you is that you won't have kind of intuitive knowledge connecting these things to practical events in life. So I think
well, it's the difference between having access to all of Wikipedia as a pool of knowledge and actually being able to do one or two things that it describes out of there. It's, you know, that practical skill versus being able to only ever read it in a book. And in the skills system, it talks about book learning. You can actually go read a book and up your skill in a certain area, but you can never go past +2 because that's about as much as you can learn. So to get further, you actually either need to find yourself a teacher or trial and error,
Yeah, and you will have to actually drop the chip, learn kind of manually, and then go beyond what you had on the chip. So I always thought that was interesting.
Well, if you read through When Gravity Fails, which is, according to Mike Pondsmith, the creator of Cyberpunk, is one of those critical books that really gave influence to the game for him. And they had two things called Moddies and Daddies. And these were basically chips that you could plug into your head and you'd get access to a raft of skills in that area. So it may have been, say, the German language. And as soon as you popped it out, you don't know a word of it. Pop it back in and you're fine. So those sorts of things are kind of really useful. And I've heard people talk about, with the whole Neuralware side of things, that pretty much all their characters end up getting chipware sockets because that way they can swap in and out these skills as they need them.
It reminds me a bit of Westworld, a little bit, the TV series, where they will just switch personalities, basically, like a chip, and they will go like, let's add up a little bit of, more empathy, more intelligence, more or less this and that, just by changing code.
Yeah, well, that sort of links in with the area of artificial intelligence, but we'll get back to that later.
All right. So that's for Neuralware.
Well, there's also interface plugs.
I think
interface plugs and the various links that you get, which allows you to sort of integrate yourself with whatever device you're packing, such be it a smart gun, a vehicle, cyberdeck to access the net, as it now stands, and that sort of stuff. And then on the final bit of Neuralware is the boosterware. So just, getting your, I suppose, nervous system swapped over for fiber optic or whatever you want to, might be done there to basically make you quicker.
Yeah, I was thinking with the new world with Red, do you think all this Neuralware is a lot harder to get because you cannot actually walk into a pharmacy that sells it and get it installed by the company, and it's not kind of, to put it that way, it doesn't have a warranty? I will say it seems like something that's very specialized, like specialized kind of procedure and things. So I think it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to get it and more expensive.
I think it's likely to be more difficult to get, just given the shift in Cyberpunk Red. But given that a neural processor is kind of critical to everything, I can see it as part of a basic install package that most Ripper docs would put forward to sort of support my new players into getting Cyberpunk and getting the Cyberware up. I actually put together 4 or 5 different packages for when they sold out to a corporation, covert military, or the black market. So regardless of what package they chose, what organization they chose to sell out to, the packages are pretty much the same. There was a cyber soldier, there was somebody, something aimed at a lot of bioware to enhance that sort of side of the person. There's one with vehicle links and a techie sort of setup so that they could have a couple of interesting little features, including a cyber arm and that sort of stuff. Yeah, cause as they say, dead is dead, parts is parts, dead guys is parts. Ario Meat Wagon? Hell yeah, it's the best place to sell. And I got top euro for parts I bring in. Warmer the better, if you know what I mean.
we're talking about cyberware. Let's see what cyberware comes with Red. We have a cyber audio, a cyber optic, interface plugs, and the reflex boost.
I mean, there's so much else that's a possibility, but even those nice basic ones, you've got audio, optics, and limbs, basically, and then a reflex booster and a pair of plugs that you can connect to things. And in all cases, a lot of them, you don't need much more than that. The great thing about the various Chromebooks is they've given you a lot of extra resources, but if you strip it back down to the basics, which is what we've got here, it gives you just enough to get started.
Out of that cyberware table, which is very limited, what would you add to Red, or like something that is there that is missing that you go, oh gosh, why didn't they put this on?
I would probably go with grafted muscle or muscle and bone lace. It's tempting to go with skin weave, but that it's a high armor value and might disrupt things. But muscle and bone lace to make yourself stronger is always a good thing. And you can see from the promo videos for Cyberpunk 2077, it's definitely in there. And I don't see them ripping it out. I mean, the great thing about having cyber arms and cyber limbs is you can have things like hidden holsters, built-in weapons. One of the things I'd be tempted to do if I played a Netrunner would be to actually get a pair of optics instead of wearing those big stupid VR goggle headset thingies and marking myself out as I'm the Netrunner. I'd just have a pair of cyber optics and hide that whole side of me so that I look just like another member of the party. But I can see the net through my cyber optics and then pack in a deck into a cyber leg.
I had that problem when I was running Red, because they got into a building and they were pretending to be maintenance. And some of them were pretended to be guards. Mm-hmm. And I told the Netrunner, well, you're wearing a meat suit. What do you call it? A
skin suit.
Yeah, and you have the goggles. There's no way anyone's going to believe that you're maintenance or a guard. So I made him kind of change clothes and keep his deck like in a bag and the goggles away. And he only put them on when no one was looking. But yeah, I would imagine that through cyber optics you could also do that instead of the smart goggles.
Yeah, well, I mean, it basically means that as a Netrunner, you're turning your body into your cyber deck. So if you get hit with a nasty program, you're just going to start blowing out pieces of cyberware all over the place and probably catch fire. But that being said, it's like that sort of brings yourself closer to the edge and makes you more, I suppose, more of a interesting character to bring forward into the game. But I mean, all of this sort of beggars the idea of, depending on what class you're going to have, what sort of stuff do you really want to get into? I mean, as I've played more and more Cyberpunk, I've tended to go more for the BioWare. So there's things like nano-optical upgrades and that sort of stuff out of the various Chromebooks that I thought were more interesting for the characters I wanted to play, because the cost of getting cybered up, the financial cost wasn't too much of a worry, but the actual humanity loss,
they did
that
not
was the
put
challenge.
The chips in. I think I would have added that.
Look, I think they added a basic data chip where you can just put in a bit of information and that sort of stuff. And that sort of gives you a simple sort of way of accessing that sort of information or whatever. By not taking all the chips from the 2020 edition and throwing them into the now, it gives them a bit more time to sort of come up with some more interesting options.
I was disappointed not to find the red version of Mr. Stud listed, because,
Yeah, there's a couple of good stories that crop up from that one. In one of the Chromebooks, I think.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the things that I really liked out of some of the Chromebook expansions was the variable strength torso armor or body armors and skin weave and skull plating, which these are all types of cyberware to enhance your character.
Grafted muscle,
that make things
exoskeletons.
Yeah, the exoskeletons I was never a big fan of because they slow you down too much, and I think it's important to be quick as an edge runner.
What about bioengineering, like biotech?
BioWare is some of my favourite stuff. I mean, you've got we've already mentioned grafted muscle, muscle bone lace, and skin weave, which are all flavours of BioWare. But you've also got various enhanced organs, such as the Pacesetter 2000 Cyber Heart, which is like a standard heart or replacement heart valve or whatever it is in modern tech. But it allows this thing, you can throw it into overdrive and all of a sudden you get an enhancement to your movement allowance in your body. There's that sort of stuff. There's nano-optical upgrades, which give you extended visual ranges and that sort of stuff. There was a nano-audio rebuild, which allowed you to do the same, but for your ears. So there's all sorts of other weird specialities. Like if you go into the Eurosource book, there was like technology that used genetic engineering to improve your reflexes, your body, and your movement allowance. It was hideously expensive, but still, it was a good thing.
All right.
And that's not touching on the whole area of body sculpting, where, you know, the whole poser gang kind of thing of looking like the celebrity you like. But you can get yourself enhanced in any sort of direction. And when we talked in the first episode, we talked about appearance being a dump stat, you know, so you could just buy your looks to whatever you wanted. And it sort of never got thought about again. But then, of course, you go to the extreme end of that and you're looking at weird exotic creatures and furries. Exotics! You ought to be done as a dinosaur. Shit, man, it can't be done. Well, maybe. Need some extra cred, though. Hell yeah, for that price I can do it.
Let's talk about, since we're going to be talking about cyberware and cyber implants, obviously on 2020 they come with a humanity loss, which then affects your cyber psychosis, but it also affects your empathy. In the Jumpstart kit, they didn't address it, but I think we said it's pretty straightforward. But for people that don't have 2020, do you want to describe really quick how does the humanity loss affects? Like, how do you calculate it, or what's the deal with it?
Yep. All right. So in the Jumpstart kit, they had a blanket statement saying we're not going to deal with humanity loss here because it's, you know, it's the Jumpstart kit, so it's too much detail and that sort of stuff. Yeah, basically they've got a page count, they've got to stick to it, so that's cool. But the thing is, what they did describe in there is that if the cyberware is replacing something that you would normally have, so if you get a cyber eye and it's just replacing a damaged eye, then that's not going to have much of a humanity loss, because it's basically the same thing. When the humanity loss will really start to kick in is when you start adding these superhuman options. So
things that your brain is not designed to deal with.
Exactly. You know, like extending your hearing range all the way up to what bats can hear. Your brain's not designed to deal with that, so how's it going to cope? And it's going to cope by changes that are unpredictable, which is the humanity loss. So in Cyberpunk 2020, the empathy is how well you relate to people. And that then creates your humanity. And basically your humanity is your empathy times 10. So you just put a little zero on the end. Nice and easy. Mm-hmm. And then as you add in cyberware, it starts depleting your humanity total, and henceforth the term humanity loss. And every time I don't know the exact ruling on this.
No, once you get to 10.
Once you get to 10, it drops your empathy by 1.
Mm-hmm. And then 20, 30, 40.
And so on. So that way you can pack in 9 points of humanity loss worth of cyberware and not suffer for it, which usually ends up being a neural processor and a few other little features.
The thing that I like is that you actually have to roll for it, and the way it's described is because everyone reacts different to cyberware. So for some people, you know, you could have like a metallic exoskeleton inside of you and you're like, yeah, whatever, like your brain doesn't even notice. But for some other people, it could send them into a shock and they are constantly thinking like, who the fuck am I? So I think that's why you roll humanity loss.
Yeah. It's how you deal with it. But it's not just like who the F am I. It's also things like, I've got this massively reinforced skeleton. I can punch my way through walls. I don't need to be nice to people because you're annoying me. I might just rearrange your insides.
I can crush them.
Yeah, exactly. Look, in one of the groups I was playing with, basically a couple of the PCs started referring to the NPCs as flesh packs. And these were the less humane individuals because, you know, they were fleshy and squishy and they were so easy to kill. And that's a real worry coming from some of the players, but they were playing the more cyber psycho characters.
Fair enough.
And these were individuals who were very close to the edge. But anyhow, getting back to the cyberware and cyber psychosis stuff, there are actually a couple of treatments for it as well. So regular therapy sessions can help you recover some of it. And for surefire recovery is to get it all ripped out, get extensive brain dance based therapy, and you can become human again.
Learn to be a human again.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, with player comments like empathy, I'll get the chip, is, you know, that's shows some of the attitude that goes on, and it's good for a laugh, really. But anyhow,
yeah. So basically, if you had the Jumpstart kit and you want to add all these cyber implants from the Chromebooks or from 2020, just roll your humanity loss anyway, and every 10 points that you accumulate, just drop that player's empathy by 1. And then to recover, basically, I mean, you don't recover it yet. Bad luck. Wait until the red comes up. But anyway, I think that's it.
Well, Red will make a lot of changes to it, I suspect. But anyhow, that's the future. Right. Yep, it's only 50 to implant the optic. But you have to provide it, as I said before. And painkillers are extra. Okay, fine. I'll do a brick to the back of the head then.
Well, the option that I wanted to talk about is the chipware, which is the typical Matrix scene when Neo gets up and says, "I know Kung Fu," or when I think they're running, and I think he asks Trinity, like, "Do you know how to drive this thing?" And she kind of
says, "No, but I will shortly."
Yeah, exactly. And then they upload the program onto her. So you can do that in Cyberpunk using chips. So there's 2 types of chips. There is the APTR. What does that stand for? I don't know.
Here's where I have to flick through the book again because I've never actually thought about it. It's just that, like, they're skill chips.
Well, let's call it, there's skill chips, and then there is
reflex chips, and they're basically for physically based skills. So piloting AV, or as a martial art, as you've got listed there. Martial arts. But it also covers a lot of other areas such as archery, dance, handguns, any sort of weapon skills, any sort of piloting skills, including cars and bikes, and also technical skills.
The thing with this is that you cannot just put it on and then bang, you know how to dance, because even if you know the movements and the sequences, your body is not used to it. So definitely it usually takes, is it 2 weeks of practicing?
No, it's 2 days per skill level.
Oh, there you go.
I had to look it up recently.
And with this, you can only go up to 3.
Yep.
Level 3. So basically, say you want to know Taekwondo, so you buy a chip level 2, you chuck it in, you practice for 2 days, and then that's it. You have martial art Taekwondo 2. You spend probably 700 Eurobucks for the chip. It's usually 350 per level.
Yeah, 350 to 700.
And then you can use it. But one thing to remember is that you do not get any experience. You do not get better at it. You do not get worse. You're basically following a series of...
Yep, you're following a program.
Yeah, exactly. So if you wanted to get really good at it, you basically have to take off the chip and then go and learn it the proper way.
Yeah, and in various Cyberpunk campaigns I've played in, either the players will each pick up some skill in teaching and cross-train each other, or players will start accessing things like gyms or training programs and whatever else to ways to improve their own skills. So they're basically investing money in their own sort of future like that to sort of rapidly improve skills.
Yeah, and I mean, this is handy if, for example, you're going abroad and you want to speak a language, and you can just buy the chip for it, and then that's it. So those are the MRAM chips, which is like the knowledge.
Yeah, that brings us to the second type of chips, the MRAMs.
So those ones, they're instant.
Yep, and I remember the couple of lines straight out of When Gravity Fails, which is basically he slotted the chip and he instantly knew German, and it was all just there, and then he plugged the chip out and it was all gone. So it's kind of like that neural expansion that suddenly there's this other world added to what you know.
One of the chips that I thought it was a lot of fun is this thing called the crypto chip, which basically encrypts your vocabulary. So if you kind of make a copy of it and give it to someone else, you can be talking, I don't know, you can be telling each other a bedtime story while you're doing like a massive illegal operation. Yeah, you can
be talking gibberish to one another and no one will know what you're saying, but the message will be somewhat private. Yeah, it's a good option like that.
For chipware, basically any
intelligence-based skill, yeah,
you can find it on a chip for a price.
Yeah, and at the bottom of the int-based skills is actually the daytimer chip, which is kind of like your personal organizer, your planner in a chip. And this is a great one to have for a player so they can keep themselves organized, but for NPCs so you can pop the chip and find out what this person was up to, find out what their phone listing was, find out information about them and that sort of stuff, and who their contacts are and that sort of stuff. Little bits like that, it's like comes down to how you use them. Another one in one of the Chromebooks was the humanity chip, or the empathy chip, which gave you a +1 to empathy for social interactions. Mind you, you had to get the neural processor and the chipware socket to actually access it, but it's a way of restraining your humanity loss a little.
Yeah, I think there's one that gives you +2 seduction, and I imagine it's just like, like a compilation of every single pickup line ever said, and and tips.
Yeah.
So.
Careful not to crush it. Just shut up while I rip the audio. Today we're talking about cyberware and gear, so we're going to go through and give you some of our best picks for that sort of stuff.
Yes, a lot of people have been talking about more implants or more gear when they're playing Red, because the Jumpstart kit is very limited. So most of the stuff we're going to talk about is from CP 2020, maybe in some of the Chromebooks. But I think you can use it anyway on Red with a little bit of adjustment. So
I think converting from 2020 to Red will take virtually no adjustment, but there might be one or two little things that you need to tweak. So first up, we've got gear, or do we want to do cyberware?
Yeah, let's go with the gear. So if each of us do 3 things that you think are interesting or that is like a must-have, what would you go with?
My first biggest pick would be armored clothing. The fashion wear out of the end of Chrome 4, it allows you to put anything in armor into anything. So you can dress as stylish as you like, but actually have the SP or stopping power to not get wasted looking good.
All right. Do we have any prices for it, or?
You're usually looking from between 100 and 200 euro to cover that sort of stuff. The stopping power values have dropped a little bit in the new edition, which, given how hard it can be to get rid of some goons at the time, is not a bad thing. Adding stylization to the top of that, you can just flick over the page and, things like generic clothing is base value, leisure wear is doubled, high fashion is 4 times. There's a whole bunch of examples of different fashion styles, and you can pick up standard bits of clothing. Even just looking through what's listed in 2020, you can pick your armor, you can then multiply it by the style you want it to look like. It's just that the Chromebook has a multitude of additional examples and a lot of variation in it.
All right. One of the gears that I would choose, or it's not really gear, but it's come to drugs. I think drugs were not really mentioned on the Jumpstart kit, but there is this thing called a speed healing drug, which you can use and basically allows you to heal twice as fast overnight.
Yep.
So for Red, basically, once you use your first aid, you get healed an amount equal to your body. But if you have the speed healing drugs, then it will be your body times 2. However, it's expensive. It's around 1,200, I believe.
I thought it was 1,600 or 16 something. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's expensive.
It's expensive. And also for the next week, you have your reflex gets affected a little bit, so you roll 1d6 divided by 2, and
and usually in the game they refer to this as things like the jitters and that sort of stuff, so it may actually affect not just your reflexes but a bit of your dexterity as well, so while you recover from it.
But yeah, speed healing drugs are a good way to get back into action quicker than
if you need to do it quickly. Yes. What else we're going with? Well, in that same sort of vein, there's 2 pieces I'm going to offer in terms of just being out there. Spray skin from the first aid kit, or it's listed in the first aid kit, but it's a spray skin. It allows you to sort of cover wounds. A friend of mine who was working as an ICU nurse showed me basically this roll of what looked like duct tape, except it was clear and sort of skin looking like. And you just, like clear contact, and you just rub it, basically wind it around the arm or the thing where the wound is, and it seals the wound and stops infection getting in and all that kind of stuff, which is really, really cool. But something even better than that, if you can afford it, is trauma team coverage. Because, for the cost of $500 a month, you have a AV4, 2 solos, and medical coverage that will come almost anywhere in Night City to pick up and save your ass. Yes, it costs €100 a minute as call out, but if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere in a really, really dangerous situation, and you've already lost half the character party, half your team, a call like this can be worth it.
And in red, would it still be available, you think?
Well, Trauma Team is listed in red, and they show up again in Cyberpunk 2077.
2077, yeah.
So I'm just going to say, yeah, they still exist.
I think so. And if not, some sort of subsidiary or similar city-wide service provided.
Oh, yeah. Or it changes from city to city as well.
Yeah. Cool. A cool thing that one of my techies use is card lock decryptor.
Yep, for busting through doors and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And basically, it gives you a +5 on your tech roll when you're trying to crack it. And I always remember, was in Terminator 2 when he goes to the ATM and plugs something in, and I think that's what it is. And in red, it seems to me that because there is more, I guess, all technology or things that are not completely connected to everything, something like a card decryptor could be good.
Well, to bust down doors, to get past things, it's always a good thing. There's always the less subtle option of, say, a 10-pound sledgehammer, but that's going to trigger whatever alarms are on the other side. So a decryptor is actually a really good choice.
What else do you have?
My final piece would be the low impedance interface cables, because for €60, that gets you a +1 to anything you plug into. So that could be interfacing with your cyberdeck, with your smart gun, with the vehicle you're controlling, and that sort of stuff. Now, it may change between this version and the next, but in terms of just having, a high quality plug-in way, when you've got your interface plugs, you plug into that device, you get a little extra bonus, a little bit of an extra edge, and those little bits add up. And, I know professional musicians who swear by high quality cabling for their sort of stuff that they do with. Okay, so next up, I suppose we've got to sort of skip on to cyberware. So do you have a first choice?
I remember you were mentioning in one of our talks about like a must-have kind of duffel bag that you give or you encourage players to have.
Yeah, I thought
off the top of your head, what does it come with?
What does it have? Okay, well, it's basically a nylon carry bag. I throw in a knife, a first aid kit, a glow stick, or actually a flash tube, a breathing mask, so that they've got like just some really basic survival stuff that you'd kind of expect everybody out on the street to have. A rebreather mask so they're not sucking in poisonous fumes, first aid kit in case something goes wrong, a light, a bag to lug it all in, and a knife just in case. I tend to be with my groups that I'll give them out one free set of clothing. It won't be armoured, it'll be tatty, but it's just something that they're not naked. And then they can work out whatever else they want from there.
All right. And let's talk about some cyber implants. Again, in the Jumpstart kit, there's like 6 of them?
Yes, well, there's an arm, a leg, an eye, an ear, interface plugs, and possibly something else. I can't remember what. But it's a fairly short list regardless. And so, to my mind, what do you want to add to that? What do you want to... So, Cyber Audio's got a couple of options. Cyber Optics have a couple of... And the one I forgot was reflex boosting. So, yeah, reflex boosters and all that sort of stuff. So, in terms of cyberware, the first thing that... It's actually weird. It doesn't actually list in cyberware in the 2020 section, except in one of the descriptors just before or after the cyberware section, is EMP shielding. Because if you get hit with an EMP weapon, it just fries your cyberware. And of course, you want that shielding to make sure that, hey, it might only be knocked out for a round, but then you can be back up and into action again. So that would be my first preference for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, if you're having a cyber optic, a cyber arm, cyber leg, or a pacekeeper, you don't want to get completely out of combat when someone throws a EMP grenade or someone tasers you.
Yeah, well, if you're looking at something like C-SWAT, the anti-cyber psycho squad, the first choice that they're going to do in terms of weapon of taking somebody out is to hit them with an EMP blast, because that will probably wipe out 90% of their cyberware if they haven't had it shielded. So for them, that's the easy option. You hit them with an EMP blast first, and then you follow up and just finish off the flesh. So that's kind of, that's what a professional cyberpunk should have. Some good shielding.
Very nice.
So your choice?
There's this thing called Adrenal Booster.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it.
That's the one that adds +1 to your reflexes for a short time?
Yeah, boost your reflex by 1 for 1d6 plus 2 turns, and you can use it 3 times per day.
Yeah, so that's 30 seconds to a minute and a half, 8 turns.
Yeah, you know what? With this one, do you think that it will also add to your dexterity?
Well, the speedware that's listed in the thing only boosts your initiative, which is pretty much standard for what's listed in the thing. Look, reflexes is how quick you are, not how coordinated you are. So I think it'll only boost your reflexes, not so much on the dexterity side. I've gone through all the stats of all the punks and that sort of stuff, the base characters and temp, those sort of things. And dexterity tends to be pushed a little higher than things like reflexes. So they're not too worried about how quick your opponents are, but they want your opponents to be dexterous so they can actually engage in martial arts and have a relatively reliable athletics and that sort of stuff. And evasion, I think evasion also includes that. No, evasion's reflexes, so forget that. Being quick is important, especially because you want to win that initiative contest if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see many options for boosting your dexterity. And how would you boost coordination in somebody? It's, I can easily understand how Cyberware can boost how quick you are, by replacing some of your nervous system with fiber optic or whatever else they choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that then becomes a bit of a question mark. But, it's still definitely worth having. Every little slice of edge you can get is just bliss, really.
Right.
My second choice is the muscle and bone lace. That ups your body stat, so more hit points is always good. Being able to take more damage and keep going while it's happening. There's a couple of variations of that in one of the Chrome books that also can boost reflexes. I would see that more boosting your dexterity, but it really depends on when Red gets released.
So for the muscle and bone lace, what actually does it give you in terms of in-game mechanics and how much it costs?
Well, it depends on what level you get, but it's 1500. The humanity loss is half a d6, but it increases your body type by 2. So that's a fairly huge boost, really, in terms of what you're capable of. And it can be combined with grafted muscle as well, which is only 1,000 per point, but for up to +2. But it's cheaper to get the muscle and bone lace, and also the humanity loss is a lot less on that one. Yeah, I like working with the trauma team. Specialist paramedics that'll kill anything in the way of getting to their injured client. The shift works great if you can get it, but sometimes it slacks off, especially with the corpse lying low after the Red. Having that regular gig was good. Moving right along, you had a couple of options in terms of cyber optics.
So back to our cyberware suggestions. In the Jumpstart kit, there is a cyber optic, but it doesn't give you the option to have an anti-dazzle option on it. And the thing is, flashbangs are really common, especially used by the police, or if a whole bunch of people are in a room and they're doing an extraction or they want to use non-lethal force. A flashbang is always you said, like an EMP if they know that people cyber up, or a flashbang just to get everyone completely dazed.
Well, if you've got a whole bunch of human-based targets without much enhancement, then a flashbang is a great way of blinding and deafening a whole heap of them, so that then you have the option of basically moving in with low risk, low threat if you're part of the police force or security or whatever.
The scary thing about it is that it's not only you're blind, but also you cannot hear anything, and that is if you're not stunned on top of that.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the anti-dazzle in the optics, which is designed to deal with the bright flash. You also need to worry about level dampening with your cyber audio, which is designed to cut out that excessive noise. So I've been did an adventure for my my local group, and as they progress through this house party, as they move up through the levels, the noise gets louder and louder because the band playing on the top floor is just really pumping it out as loud as they can get it. So things like level dampening are designed to cut out that painful noise. So yeah, it's always a good one. And if you look through, I can't remember, I think it's Chrome 1 or 2, it's got the nano optical upgrade, which is basically getting nanosurgeons inside your eyeball to adjust the internals.
Okay.
But that only tends to give you low light and one other little feature tacked onto it.
Well, that's all that I'm talking about. It's relatively cheap, costs 200 euros, and you just lost 0.5 humanity.
In terms of if you're getting a cyber optic, I always add anti-dazzle because it's just just like it's a no-brainer. You want to be able to keep seeing. You don't want to have if you get hit with a flashbang, you lose your sight for maybe a minute or something, and that's then a whole window of opportunity you're giving to your opponents. So in that sort of sense, you really want to restrict that time.
What else do you have?
Well, I've already talked about muscle and bone lace, and the cyber optic, the add-ons, and the nano optical. I mean, this depending on your character, really. Like the various grades of skin weave become really useful.
Skin weave is an interesting one. I want to.
Yeah, well, just like it goes all the way from I think about 4 or 6 SP up to 20, and so it gets you've got a minor plastically looking skin all the way up to 20, which would be heavy industrial grade plastic with metallic weave through it, so you look more like tires, really.
Yeah, a lot of players, that's their go-to. Armor the whole body to SP12 for 2,000 euros.
Yep.
Difficult to spot and only 2d6 humanity. A lot of people use it, and the problem with it in red is that what happens when you have a skin wave is that your skin becomes kind of a composite of plastic, or I don't know, whatever material it is, which means to be able to repair it and to function, you have to ingest plastic. So when you have skin wave, you have to take some supplements every week, otherwise your skin wave starts falling off, basically, and breaking down. So in red, that's gonna be interesting, because if you cannot get them, what are you gonna do?
I think some of that low level stuff would be relatively easy. When I put together a scream sheet for my character group, I put in a little advert for getting your cyber shakes, €50 a week worth of fuel just to replenish damaged skin weave and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a good option. But I mean, this is the great thing about red, is that if, as a game master, you think a particular option is overpowered, and that there's been some discussion around skin weave that it's too much body armor. But if an option's too powerful, too weak, it's either too common or too uncommon, you can use the fact that everything's been shot to shit and materials are hard to get hold of to limit certain access to certain cyberware.
Yeah, or if your character had a stash of the drugs that he needed to keep going, just someone broke into it and now you don't have it.
Exactly. Oh, look, there's a great thing I remember from the Akira graphic novel where 2 street punks find this old lady who's died of starvation, and her house is full of cans of food, but she doesn't have a can opener. And she was too scared to go out to get the can opener. But the punks said to themselves, yeah, she's probably right, because you know what, we would have just wasted her and taken the food anyway. And that's the kind of attitude that tends to be cropping up from time to time. So what's your next option?
Yeah, the last thing, I have some other options that I thought for red could be relevant. Like you could get a wideband radio scanner for 100 euros, only 2 humanity loss. I figure if there's no internet and people that cannot afford to pay for their telephone and whatnot will be using old radio frequencies, like walkie-talkies type of thing.
Yeah.
So I figure a radio scanner will be pretty good.
Yeah, that will be an excellent option. But in the cyberware list for 2020, there's the phone link, but I suppose in this case it becomes an agent link where you can link into your agent to get access to all those features, which becomes almost like a mini cyber deck almost. One of the options I really like is the micro missile launcher.
Okay.
Well, you throw it into your cyberarm, and it's a 4d6 weapon with fires these 4 little micro missiles, which is no good against most things. But the nice thing about them is they can go around corners.
Oh, okay.
They can do a 90-degree turn, so you don't even need direct line of sight to your target. You just pop.
But on your command, or?
I think they just have a percentage chance of hitting. I'll have to go check the page, but
that's pretty handy. Yeah. Maybe they have an infrared tracking thing inbuilt onto them or something.
Well, I'll just quickly read the description while you talk about your next option.
I thought one of the cool things is a storage space in your body. So there is a couple of options. There is like a dermal pockets, so you could have like a kind of like a wallet on any part of your body, and you basically reach into a skin pocket. I thought that was fun.
Yep.
And also you could have actually just storage space on a cyberlink. So basically, I mean, your legs are already replaced, but basically you have an empty compartment to stash things on.
I've seen people with mini bars. They've got a mini bar in their leg.
Yeah, I think the storage space was 50 euros for 2 humanity loss.
That's pretty good, really, if you want that sort of stuff.
And someone was asking, like, why is there humanity loss on, like, let's say, a cyber weapon on my hand if I have a cyber arm? or like, for example, that, like I have a storage space in my leg, why am I paying for humanity lost again? And the thing is, because you need new connections to your brain to activate that part inside of your leg.
Well, it's also the thing, like, if you've got just a straight limb, you can go, yeah, okay, this is my arm. But as soon as your arm can rack out automatic fire, or you can open up the side of your leg and pull up a couple of things that you're stored in there, the problem is, of course, that then changes how you perceive your own body, your own humanity, and how you deal with people. Because if I can do this, why can't everybody else? But anyhow, getting quickly back to the missile launcher, missile launcher, it's basically heat-seeking guided missiles with little steering vents. It's got a weapon accuracy of +2. They're self-guiding. They have a 3 in 10 chance of losing the target, and they're €50 each. But 200 meters, 4d6 worth of damage. It's actually not too bad, and they can do a 90-degree turn or less, giving them the ability to track around corners.
Very nice.
I picked it as a weird option for my medtechie.
Let's finish off this by talking about Neuralware and cyberchips. So some of the things that we describe actually have a requirement of cyber implant, which is a Neuralware processor, which costs €1,000, and you
1,000 and a D6 humanity loss.
Yep, 1d6 humanity loss. And then things that you can put on top of that is lots like your smart weapon, your reflex boosters.
Yeah, the thing is that the things like the reflex booster and the interface plugs, which are both listed in red, I assume it's just they're going to say, oh yeah, you've got a neural processor in there somewhere anyway, or maybe it's just assumed, or maybe they don't require them anymore, and you just require a neural processor if you want to get some of the more advanced features, like smart gun links, or linking to any sort of device or piece of technology, something like the pain editor, which allows you to tune out hot and cold.
No,
pain
I think they just didn't mention so they not to get into the humanity loss part of things, and just to simplify it a little bit. But I would use it if players are wanting to get their own cyberware, then I will definitely make them get this.
And as a last word, as we beam across the waves into the night, wear Militech. Helps keep the body count down.